Hey guys, welcome to another video on Balloon Head Productions. I'm your host as usual. My name is Marcelo Nestroza, and today I will be talking about Doctor Who Season 1, Episode 1, entitled Rose. But as you guys can tell, I'm not alone in this video. I'm joined once again by my good friend Geek in Review. What were you thinking about when you heard that they were going to relaunch Doctor Who way back in 2005, if you can remember?
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to ask that because I was young enough that the season before this with Sylvester McCoy was on, but I don't really remember anything about it. I remember I watched it and I remember a few scenes of seeing a Dalek and seeing a few other things. So it was a bit like Doctor Who and James Bond. There wasn't one going on when I was a young guy, and then it was when I was a bit older in my 20s that these things, or when I was a teenager for James Bond, that it came back. But I just remember there was a huge sort of, is this going to be any good? Because it was terrible when it ended. And a guy that I worked with at the time, Doctor Who was his favourite show. And to give you a sort of comparison, that you'd get is if you think, I'll just call him Kevin, for example. This guy Kevin was like Fadry or PJ, where he had an encyclopedic knowledge of Doctor Who. And if there was ever like Doctor Who in a magazine or something, he would buy two versions of the magazine, one to read and one to keep. So I remember before watching it, there being this guy just giving me such a huge buzz for it. But at the same time, I remember sort of going, I don't know how this is going to work because I'm not sure how aware you are of what Billie Piper was famous for in the UK before she was an actress. Do you know anything about that?
No, I do not know what she was famous for.
Right, so she was a singer, and think of it like a Britney Spears style singer. About two
Oh,
years before Britney Spears came out, and then Britney Spears came out and completely torpedoed her career, and then she sort of reinvented herself as an actress. So it was a big sort of, oh, it's got this singer in it. How is it going to be any good with a singer in it? And yeah, maybe not this episode stands up, but Billy certainly impressed me, and Christopher Eccleston was an actor that I'd been aware of for a while as well. So I remember looking forward to it, but not having high expectations.
for me in 2005, I didn't even know Doctor Who was a thing until much later on. I mean, I will be honest with everybody, and I've told this story before. I don't know if I told this story before on my channel or someone else's channel. The only reason that I got into Doctor Who is because I was on Twitter one night, and a girl that I liked at the time uh, uh, took a picture of a sonic screwdriver. I had no idea
Mm-hmm.
what it was. I had no idea what the hell she was talking about. But in order to like get this kinship with her, I saw that on the top of the tweet that she put Doctor Who, and I looked it up, and I saw that I saw that there were two versions available to me at the time. There was the original show from the 60s, I believe, and the reboot that where we're talking about now had just started its second season with David Tennant. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
so my first Doctor, if you really look at it, is not even Christopher Eccleston. My first Doctor is David Tennant, and then my first official run with the show as when I became a fan was with Matt Smith. So why don't we just talk about this first
Mm-hmm.
episode? That's a little bit weird, a little bit strange, and a little bit nonsensical, but I love it all the same. It's about this young woman who works at a clothing store by the name of Rose. And at the end of just before the end of her shift, she gets in charge with taking, some lottery money to, for some reason, the basement of the store. She goes to see the chief electrician. And while she's going to see the chief electrician, she gets sort of this weird feeling that somebody's following her, and it turns out to be the this plastic mannequin that's in the store comes to life and starts chasing her, and that's when she meets the doctor for the first time. So what do you think of the initial setup of this episode?
I think it's good. It gets you. into it, and it's got a really good pace. And although it's a little dated, because I don't think, this was before HD and things, it draws you in without overloading you about the Doctor Who lore. Definitely. So I think it's a good hook. I think it's maybe a little bit too quick. It could have been maybe an extra 15 minutes or maybe an hour for an intro to an episode. But I enjoyed it. I think Rose wasn't the most complicated character, and they don't overcomplicate the Doctor and the setup or the aliens. But it's, if you've never seen it, it's a perfect introduction to Doctor Who.
The one thing that really surprised me is the whole notion of people being scared of these plastic mannequin guys. I kept it because I come from, I grew up watching American TV, and then, like, guys, somebody take a bat and whack one of those things. Why are you running away from plastic? It really took me a minute to understand the milieu that I was in, and once I sort of accepted that, it got a lot better for me. But one thing that I will say is I love the way that Christopher Eccleston plays the Doctor when he first encounters Rose, because I love the way that he just kind of goes and he gives her no answers, and every time she has a question, he just sidesteps it and doesn't even answer it. It's so fucking frustrating, but so funny the way he does it. It's just great.
Yeah, I think again, going back to the pace and the way that he talks and things, they don't over explain anything.
Right.
Obviously in later episodes in the Christopher Eccleston run, they give the backstory of what the Doctor's been up to and who that he is. But it's just a really fun episode. Yeah, the effects and things date it a little bit, but it works.
One moment that I really, really enjoy is when Rose is about to get whacked by one of the plastic mannequins, and the Doctor saves her, and that's when you're first introduced to the Doctor in the series, and the only thing he says is "run." And then,
Yep.
and then there's this when they get to where they're going, the Doctor tries to explain to Rose really, really quickly what's happening about, that these mannequins are controlled by this electronic receiver on the roof. And then out of nowhere, with no explanation at all, the Doctor takes a bomb out of his coat. And goes, "I'm going to go to the roof and blow them up, and this is all going to be over." And he walks out, of the place where they're in, and then he comes back and he goes, "Oh, by the way, my name's a Doctor," and then Rose says that she's Rose, and he goes, "Well," he goes, "Run for your life." I'm like, really? I'm like, how absurd and ridiculous and great this is, but it was absurd, because I'm like, why? But guys, it sounds like I'm complaining, but you have to understand, I had no idea what Doctor Who is. To me, at the time,
Right.
it sounded absurd that a woman would follow a man that sounds like he's off his rocker, and like, what the, like, why like, what's going on here? Why did this guy have a bomb? Where did he get it from? What the fuck is going on here? But again, all these questions are so great to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the sort of villains in this episode, I think, although I don't think they've ever been used in Doctor Who since the first episode, but it's the sort of not standard, but thing that they do throughout the rest of the seasons, which is it's something that's around you every day, like the Weeping Angels, the statues that you just wouldn't consider a threat. And then when they make it a threat, you're like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. You can do some really good things with that.
The moment that the moment that I really love is later in the episode when Rose really starts to get intrigued about who the Doctor is, and she goes to her boyfriend's house. She goes to her boyfriend's house, Mickey, to borrow his computer to search on the web, because in 2005, I guess in the UK, not everybody had access to internet in their house, and she finds this website of this guy who does research on the Doctor, and she goes to see him. And I thought that was a really good that was a really good scene for the people like me at the time who had no idea who the fucking Doctor was, and it really helped me understand of who the Doctor is and who he could possibly be. What did you think about that whole scene with Rose going to see this guy who had this whole idea of the Doctor being an immortal time traveler, which he turned out to be right.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I thought that was a great device to introduce the audience and explain what was going on. I wish they'd kind of brought that guy back later on in the season or just any season. Uh, but yeah, it worked. And again, not they didn't go too much into the lore of who is this guy, what has he done, what is he capable of doing. It was just he's been around. We don't know who he is. We don't know how he does it. And even by the end of the episode, I don't think the Doctor says he's a Time Lord. He says he's got a time machine, but he doesn't get into the whole Time Lord thing yet. So it's not basic bones or like there's no meat on the bone. There is stuff there, but you've got to remember that this was shown at like 6 p.m. on a Saturday night, so it was aimed at kids as well. And I think the episode does balance that, explaining to a child who this guy is and how the world is going to work going forward.
Let me ask you this, because I'm split on the way that I feel about this guy. There's some times where I love him, and there's some times where I just want to hit him and say go away. What do you think about Mickey as a character? Not taking into account what's going to happen to him later in the series, because we'll talk about that. But not now. We'll talk about it in the future. But what do you think about him as a character in this episode?
Mickey is, for me, the weakest point of this episode for a few reasons. One, it kind of sets up the standard, not the standard, I suppose, but the recurring theme through later seasons of involving the companion's family, and I don't always like that. I think sometimes you just keep the adventure to this guy and whoever is in the TARDIS with him. But yeah, the whole Mickey Rose dynamic felt a little bit basic. It didn't work for me, but I get why he's there. You have to just show that Rose is a normal girl. That's the whole thing about Rose is she's not a genius, she's not a spy, she's not a scientist. She's just a girl that works in a shop with an ordinary life. And Mickey
Right.
and Rose's mum are the devices for that, and they kind of use them too much for comedy. Sometimes it works for me, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of Mickey.
Right. I mean, look, I do think that Mickey really comes off as the guy that wants to have Rose as a serious girlfriend, but Rose in this episode comes off to Mickey as, yeah, she's kind of interested, but she's kind of not. She's like Rose. Rose comes off to me as that kind of girl that is like, oh, I don't know how I really feel about you. I love you, having you in the friend zone. I would like to go this far with you, but I don't want to go all the way. Again, what happens in the later seasons, which we'll talk about eventually, I think is really cool, and I think that they gave Mickey a sense of redemption in the later seasons. But
Mm-hmm.
I do feel that in season one, I do feel like he's a dog that just follows Rose around and tolerates her obsession with the Doctor, which will become more prevalent as we go on here. The other thing, the other thing that I really enjoy, although some people might find it annoying, I really love the relationship between Rose and her mother, because
Mm-hmm.
it's this typical, like, it's this typical relationship between a mother and a daughter. She The way that she treats Rose is kind of like, oh, I care about you, but I want you to carry your own weight. It's like she's like kind, but she's annoyingly kind to me. And I think that in later seasons, I think Jackie gets better, and we sort of understand why she is the way that she is. But in this episode, I think that she's like just there.
I did love the scene with the Doctor in Jackie's bedroom,
Yeah.
where he just puts her in her place because Jackie is a good, objectively a good-looking woman, and the Doctor just like, no, it's not, no, you're not my type. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
I just love that.
To me, Jackie is to me, Jackie is she's like this typical mom. She really didn't have much to do in this first episode. I thought that this first episode did a great job of giving us a good idea of what the Doctor's like,
Mm.
what his belief system is, and how he handles problems. which is kind of crazy, because the Doctor as a character within itself always comes off to me as a guy that doesn't have a plan. He just runs into shit and just figures it out as it goes. And for me, that kind of made me nervous. But as a television viewer, that makes you invested in what the Doctor and what the companion are going through that in that particular week, because you don't think that this guy has a plan when he actually does have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I ask you a question then? If you'd never seen Doctor Who, once you had watched this episode, were you intrigued by the mystery of was going to be revealed about this guy next? Because they don't go into like any detail about like the Time Lords or the Time War. Or, I mean, they mention the Time War in the next episode, but the Time War or the Daleks or anything like that. It's just like absolute basic stuff.
If I'm look, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. When I first watched this season, I had already been sold on Doctor Who, but the reason why I was sold on Doctor Who was because I saw season two with David Tennant, and David Tennant as the Doctor really sold me on Doctor Who as a whole series. But the reason why I kept watching the series initially was because of a girl. So
Right.
I wasn't really hooked on Doctor Who until David Tennant's run. I always said, this is my last episode. I can't take this anymore. It's too goofy. But something about the show always kept me in. In that way, I've always had a weird relationship with Doctor Who, because it took me a long time to really fall in love with it. And like I said, I didn't even fall in love with the show until season two.
People don't remember that it wasn't internationally huge until the second season. It's like Game of Thrones. No one really spoke about Game of Thrones in the public outside the
Right.
sort of geek or fandom or whatever until the second season, and it got word of mouth. And I think sadly that was the same with Doctor Who.
What did you think about the way that the Doctor dealt with the Blob, the leader of the Plastic People? Did you like the way that he was kind of understanding about their situation, or like did you like how? What did you think about that whole thing?
I think that his solution or his point of view in that is very Doctor Who now. But at the time watching the episode, you might be like, why is this guy doing that? But there's always a deeper level, because not talking about specific episodes, but later on, you find out the monster isn't the monster. It's only a monster because that's how people view it. And I think, yeah, because obviously Russell T Davies was a huge fan of the old show. Uh, it's something that he did incorporate, and he did take time to explain it. And sorry to repeat myself, but it's just a great overall introduction to the concept of the Doctor, and how no matter which Doctor it is, if it's David Tennant or Tom Baker or Jodie Whittaker or whatever, there's always that other level that the Doctor sees something or picks up on something that other people don't pick up on. And I think it's not overly done in this episode, but it's well done.
I really appreciated that this kind of off the wall wacky character that seemed to me that he was off his rocker really cared about this life form, and he would have done anything that he could have to resolve the situation peacefully. But it was really funny to me that after the Doctor had been captured by the plastic mannequins, that it was Rose was the one that sort of took care of the situation and made the decision for the Doctor. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, because number one, I thought it was really dumb about how long they lingered on the Doctor struggling with the plastic people, and they kept looking.
Mm-hmm.
The director kept doing shots between Rose, going back to the Doctor, Rose. I mean, it was like so. It was very very long winded to me. But I don't like the fact that Rose did what she did, to get the Doctor free, and because she got the
Right.
Doctor free, the chemical that killed the plastic people just sort of fell into the vat and sort of took the head off the leader of the plastic people, therefore laying waste to the rest of the plastic people that were making a mess in Greater London down there. But I thought I thought that could have been handled differently. What did you think about that solution, about having Rose be the one that makes a decision that ultimately brings this first episode to a close?
I think certainly the end of the episode, growing up in the UK and watching kids TV, it felt like a very not I can't remember any specific names of shows, but it felt a lot like shows that I watched as a young child when I was like maybe 7, 8, 9, 10. And yeah, I get where you're coming from. I think we've got different issues with this episode, and yours is probably a little bit more story related, and mine is a little bit more superficial on how it looks, because I think it has aged quite badly in terms of how it looks. But yeah, I've got no problem with the characters or Rose or how it ended, but I get why some people might watch this and just instantly dismiss it as now being too old, because it's almost 20 years old. You've got to remember, like, that's insane that it is almost, it'll be 20 years old in 2 years.
But I do agree with you that the special effects and some shots in this first episode are really shaky. Like the first time that Mickey interacts with the plastic people and he gets eaten by
Yeah.
this trash can, it just looked really bad.
Mhm.
But but it was funny, but it looked bad. And you know, and that plastic substitute that Rose went to dinner with, and then later the
Mhm.
doctor took his head off and just went all
Yeah.
crazy with the plastic scissor hands. I thought that looked cheesy as hell. But but I think look, as great as Doctor Who is, I think the one thing that I've gotten used to Doctor Who is I've gotten really used to bad special effects with Doctor Who. Um, I don't think. Look, I think a large part of it is because of budget. But to
Mhm.
me, the thing that I love about Doctor Who is that is the writing and the stories that they choose to tell. I do appreciate when the visual effects are amazing. At the end of this episode, the doctor saves the day, or Rose saves the day, and it's really funny how Rose kind of doesn't want Mickey. She's kind of like dismissing. She's kind of really dismissive of Mickey, at least for me in this episode. And as
Mhm.
the doctor is going away, he gives Rose a choice. He goes, you know, you could stay here and work, eat, and die, or you could travel with me. And Rose says, no, I have to take care of this big lump, and I got my mom, and the doctor leaves. They start walking away. And the doctor, you know, you know, floats back in the TARDIS, and he opens the door. He opens the door of the TARDIS, and he says, "Oh, by the way, did I mention that this is also you could also move through this thing through time?" And that's when Rose leads Mickey there in a lurch because he's terrified. He's terrified. He's acting like a little child, and that's where the episode ends with Rose running into the TARDIS. What did you think of the final moments of this episode?
Well, yeah, I got the hook that they were going to obviously set up something with her father in the past, trying to change that later on. That was pretty obvious. But yeah, I thought it was good. Again, could have been a little bit longer for me, but if you made it longer, you might have to give a bit more explanation or go a bit more in depth. And I think the BBC had no idea if this was going to be a hit or not. So that's probably why the first season, especially, looks very cheap, even compared to like the second season. But as the ending goes, you know, it's not the best, certainly not the absolute worst I've ever seen.
All right, guys, so that'll do it for our review of Doctor Who Season 1, Episode 1, Rose. Before we go, Geek, if the folks who are watching this want to chat with you, what'll be the best place to do that on?
You can find my YouTube channel, The Geek In Review, if you just type it into the search bar on YouTube, or you can follow me on Twitter or X if it's still around by the end of this sentence, at the Geeks Reviews.
All right. And guys, if you want to chat with me about Doctor Who or anything else at all, you can also find me on X. I'm at CreekFanatic88. But until next time, as always, I'll see you when I see you.
So much happened here, and so much is about to.